بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما أما بعد فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we'll get right into the questions for today. The first questioner is asking about having suhoor while not in a state of wudu. Is this valid? Is it disliked? Is it makruh? Or is it okay? Having wudu is not a prerequisite or a condition to have suhoor. So if somebody gets up and has their suhoor without first making wudu, their suhoor is completely valid and there's no harm in this, inshallah. And if the adhan of Fajr comes in while you are not in a state of wudu, then there's no problem in that. Your suhoor is valid and your fast is valid, inshallah. Then of course you would have to make wudu before praying the Fajr prayer, because wudu is a prerequisite for prayer, but wudu is not a prerequisite for suhoor, nor is it a prerequisite to start your fast. So your suhoor is completely valid, it is not makruh, and your fast is completely valid, inshallah. The next questioner mentions that the time for the start of the Fajr prayer according to the app on their phone was 5:15. The time of the adhan of Fajr on their phone was mentioned as 5:15, whereas on the timetable from the masjid it was listed at 5:13. So this person mentions that they were having suhoor and they were still drinking water according to the time on their phone. So it was 5:15 and they were still having their suhoor, they were still drinking a drink of water. Then later on, they saw on the timetable from the masjid that the adhan time for Fajr is listed as 5:13. So does this person have to make up their fast or not? Alright, as for a person who continues to eat and drink suhoor, thinking that the time of Fajr has not come in, and then later on they realize that actually the time of Fajr had come in, is their fast valid or not? According to the majority of the ulama, a person who does this, a person who continues to eat and drink after the time of Fajr has come in without realizing it, and then later on they realize that they were still eating and drinking after the adhan of Fajr had come in, according to the majority of the ulama, of course there is no sin upon this person, but this person would have to make up this fast. And there's another opinion, that's the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and some others from the ulama. They say that this person does not have to make up the fast. There's no sin on this person, of course, because it was done unintentionally, and also the person does not have to make up the fast, and the fast is completely valid. And it seems that this is the stronger opinion, that the fast is completely valid and you would not have to make up the fast. Another point to mention here is that on the app on the phone you mentioned that the starting time for Fajr, the adhan of Fajr was 5:15, whereas on the timetable from the masjid it was 5:13. These times on these timetables and these apps, they're not 100% exactly accurate, right to the minute and right to the second. The time for Fajr that is written on these timetables and these prayer charts, it is based upon estimation and it is based upon calculations. It is not necessarily 100% exactly accurate. So if you're off by a small amount, off by like a minute or 2 minutes, then inshallah there is no harm in that, inshallah. So you would not have to make up this fast. According to your phone, the time of the start of Fajr was 5:15, right? So if you went according to that instead of according to the timetable from the masjid, which is just 2 minutes difference, then inshallah there is no harm in that and your fast is completely valid and you would not have to make up this fast in any case, inshallah. The next questioner is mentioning, my mother, who is not a Muslim, owns dogs. My husband does not want our child to go to her home unless she puts the dogs in a kennel. She has made a room clean for us to sleep if we choose to stay the night and pray in. I don't think it's a big deal to go to my mother's house for a day and she owns dogs. Is there any guidance on a situation similar in a hadith? It's causing issues between my husband and me. Alright, it is known from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لا تدخل الملائكة بيتا فيه كلب ولا صورة, that the angels do not enter a home where there is a dog or where there is an image. Right? So of course for a Muslim it is not permissible to keep dogs. You mentioned that your mother is not a Muslim, so she has a dog in her home. And your husband doesn't want your daughter to go into that home unless the dogs are in a kennel. So As a father, the husband has a right to make this type of a stipulation because perhaps he wants to keep his daughter safe from the possible harm of that dog. Perhaps he wants to keep his daughter safe from, accidentally being licked by the dog. And of course, the saliva of a dog is impure, right? So if he makes this condition based upon this, then this is a valid condition and it should be respected, inshallah. But of course, you can still go and visit your mother's home even if she has a dog, as long as the dog is kept away. There's no problem in that, inshallah. And the fact that your mother has kept a clean room for you to sleep in and to pray in, that is also fine. As long as the dog does not come into that room and that room is kept clean from any of the remnants of that dog, then inshallah there is no problem in you staying in that room or resting in that room or praying in that room or sleeping in that room. There is no problem in doing that, inshallah. So yes, you can continue to visit your mother, but if your husband wants her to keep the dogs away during your visits, then yes, your husband does have a right to make that type of a condition in order to make sure that you and your daughter are safe, and to make sure that no impurity comes to you from that dog. Of course, he has a right to make this type of a condition because, of course, there is a benefit in this, inshallah. And you can continue to visit the home of your mother, and if she has kept a place clear of the dog for you, a special room where the dog does not have access to, then yes, it's definitely fine for you to go and pray in that room and to rest in that room, inshallah. The next questioner is asking, what is the latest time that a moon sighting can be accepted? For example, I went to sleep at night with the intention that I will not fast after no moon having been sighted. But 10 minutes before Fajr, news reached me that the moon had been sighted, either locally or globally. Should I accept this moon sighting and intend to fast? Yes, as long as the moon was sighted before the time of Fajr, or as long as you heard the news that the moon has been sighted before the time of Fajr came in, then yes, it would be obligatory for you to accept that and to fast. And of course, there's the issue of global moon sighting versus local moon sighting, and there's a well-known difference of opinion of the ulama regarding that. But if you're following the local opinion, for example, that the moon should be sighted locally, and you didn't hear any news of it during the night, then you went to sleep, and then you woke up before Fajr and you heard that the moon actually had been sighted locally. So yes, you would be obligated to follow that, and you would be obligated to fast on that day, even if you woke up 10 minutes before Fajr. And the same thing applies to if you're following the global moon sighting opinion. So if you didn't hear about any sighting globally and you went to sleep, then you woke up before Fajr and you heard that, the moon has been sighted in such and such place in the world, and it's before the time of Fajr that you hear this, then it would be obligated upon you. You would be obligated to follow that, and you would be obligated to fast on that day. So as long as you get the news before the starting time of Fajr, then you have to fast on that day. If you didn't fast, and then the news came to you after Fajr that, actually the moon had been sighted, then you would have to make up that day in that type of a circumstance or that type of situation. But if you got the news before the time of Fajr came in, then it would be obligatory for you to fast on that day, even if it's 1 minute before the time of Fajr. The next questioner mentions that there is a single elderly relative of mine whom I give zakat to every year. Initially, I was the one supplying her with most of her money, but now she has other family members and friends who also give her zakat. Over the last few years, I've noticed that she's been spending her money carelessly or on lavish gifts for family and friends, on weddings or the birth of kids, etc. My question is, although she is a very close relative of mine, there are other people out there who are really struggling just to meet their basic needs. I am in a dilemma. Should I decrease the amount of zakat I give her despite her being a relative, since there are other people in faith that are more deserving? Please help me evaluate my zakat distribution. All right, so if you're giving zakat to an elderly relative, that is something that is very praiseworthy and very commendable. And inshallah, you'll get an extra reward for giving zakat to a relative, because you're fulfilling the obligation of zakat, which of course you get a reward for, and you're also keeping the ties of kinship by giving your zakat to a person who is related to you. So you should continue, if this person continues to be in need, you continue to give this person zakat. But if you see that there are other people who are also giving this person zakat, to the extent where this person is not as dependent upon your zakat in its entirety as this person was dependent upon you before, then it's all right for you to lessen the amount and give some amount to others as well. there's no problem in doing this. As long as this person is still taken care of, as long as they're receiving help from other sources as well. If you want to lessen the amount that you give this person, you still continue to give this person and help them out as they need. But if you feel that their need is not as much now for you as it was before, then you can lessen the amount and you can give some amount to other people who may be more deserving as well. There's no problem in doing that, and that would be fine, inshallah. And you would still get the reward of keeping the ties of kinship because you are still continuing to help this person out with some amount, even if it's not the same amount as before. So continue to help this person out as much as you feel is necessary to help them out. And if you want to lessen the amount a little bit and give the extra amount to other people, then there's no problem in doing that, and that is fine, inshallah. Next questioner is mentioning, my daughter was leading me in Tarawih and she accidentally sat down for tashahhud after the first rak'ah. I waited thinking that she will get up, but when she didn't, and then tapped my hands to indicate to her. But then she instead performed sajdatul sahu. What should she have done at that point? Should she have stood up and completed the second rak'ah, or was she right because she said she had already completed tashahhud, and since this is not a fard salah, she just did sajdatul sahu? All right, the Tarawih prayer, it's considered as part of Qiyamul Layl, the night prayer, and the night prayer must be done in units of 2, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Salatul Layli mathna mathna. The prayer of the night is 2 by 2. So if she sat down after the first rak'ah and she forgot to stand up for the second rak'ah, and then she was reminded about that, it would have been obligatory for her to stand up and complete the second rak'ah, even if she was already sitting thinking that it's tashahhud, and then she was reminded that no, you actually have one more rak'ah. She should have gotten up and completed the second rak'ah and then completed her prayer as regular, and then she could have made sujood sahu. She could have made sujood sahu after the end of the prayer. She could do sujood sahu before the salam or after the salam. Both ways are acceptable, inshallah. But she should have stood up and made up that extra rak'ah. Even though it's a nafil prayer, it's still a 2-unit prayer, and she should have prayed the 2 units of that. She should have made sure that she prayed both units of that prayer and made sujood sahu at the end. So this is good to know for next time, inshallah, if this situation ever arises again. Even if it is a nafil prayer, complete the extra rak'ah, complete the rak'ah that you missed, and make sure that your prayer is 2 rak'at, and then make sujood sahu at the end of the prayer, either before the salam or after the salam. And the last question for today, the questioner is mentioning, if I pray witr after Tarawih, can I pray tahajjud at night or not? What should I do? If you pray the witr prayer after the Tarawih prayer with the imam, and then you get up later in the night and you want to pray tahajjud, yes, it is absolutely fine to do this. There's no problem in doing this, inshallah. But you should make sure that you pray your prayers, your tahajjud prayer, 2 by 2, and do not repeat the witr again. If you have already prayed witr earlier in the night, then do not pray witr again later in the night, because the Prophet ﷺ said, La witrani fi layla, that there are no 2 witrs in one night. So if you already prayed the witr with the Tarawih prayer, and then later on you wake up for tahajjud, then you can pray, but it has to be 2 by 2 without another witr prayer at the end. And this is completely acceptable, inshallah. And that's the end of the questions for today. Barakallahu feekum. Wallahu a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.